The cleanest diesel engine ever built in America is also the one bankrupting the men who drive it. That is not an accident of engineering. It is the outcome of a system working exactly as designed, just not for the people behind the wheel. Here is the second fact that deepens the paradox. A modern EPA-compliant diesel engine can shut itself down on the highway, not because it is broken, but because a sensor believes it might be. In 2012, a Missouri owner-operator named Mike Pugh bought a brand-new truck built to the tightest emissions standard the industry had ever seen. Over the next 2.5 years and 250,000 miles, he replaced the entire diesel particulate filter system twice, at $6,000 each time. Mechanic under a raised hood, DPF canister on a shop floor. By the end of this film, you will understand why the technology built to clean up American trucking has, for hundreds of thousands of small operators, become the single largest threat to staying in business. Keep this in mind. The part of the truck causing the most financial damage isn't the engine. It's the system bolted on behind it. There are roughly 922,854 independent owner-operators registered with federal regulators today. Nearly 2/3 of for-hire tractor-trailer companies in America operate a single power unit. This is not a story about a handful of unlucky drivers. It is a story about the operating model of an entire industry. Pugh's decision was the same one nearly every trucker makes. Buy the newest truck available, because it is the only one legal to run, and the only one a dealership will finance. He did everything right. He followed the maintenance schedule. He used the fuel the manual specified. Driver signing paperwork at a dealership finance desk. The consequence was a truck that spent more time in the shop than the 4 trucks he'd owned before it combined. 2 DPF replacements in under 3 years erased a meaningful share of what should have been his profit margin, on a business where the average net income across the industry sits around $64,524 a year. The villain in this story is not a person. It's a stack of hardware. An EGR cooler that recirculates scorching exhaust gas back into the engine, a diesel particulate filter that traps soot and must periodically incinerate it, and a selective catalytic reduction system that injects diesel exhaust fluid to neutralize nitrogen oxide before it leaves the tailpipe. 3 separate systems, 3 separate points of failure, 1 truck and 1 driver, absorbing all of it. EGR, DPF, SCR aftertreatment stack. None of these 3 systems existed on a diesel truck before 2007. All 3 now ship as standard equipment on every new Class 8 tractor sold in the United States, bundled together, wired into a single engine control computer that treats any one failure as a reason to limit the whole truck's power. A driver cannot simply disable the faulty sensor and keep hauling. The truck won't allow it. But this is only the surface layer. To understand why this happened, go back to 2001. The EPA set a nitrogen oxide emissions ceiling for heavy trucks, so aggressive that engineers at the time weren't sure it was physically achievable with existing combustion technology. By 2007, the first wave of hardware arrived: exhaust gas recirculation, cooling hot gas and forcing it back through the engine to lower combustion temperature. It worked. It also introduced a new failure mode nobody had budgeted for: carbon buildup, cracked coolers, contaminated oil. 3 years later, in 2010, the second wave landed. The diesel particulate filter and selective catalytic reduction, stacked directly on top of the first system. Now the truck needed to periodically burn off trapped soot using extra fuel, a process called regeneration, while simultaneously dosing exhaust fluid with millimeter-level sensor precision. 2 systems, then 3, layered, not redesigned. Each new layer added new sensors, new failure points, new reasons for the truck's computer to force a D rate, cutting engine power, sometimes down to walking speed, until the fault is cleared. Drivers describe it happening on interstates, in mountain grades, in the middle of a delivery window that determines whether they get paid on time. Regulators built these systems to solve an air quality problem, and they solved it. Particulate emissions from new diesel trucks have dropped by more than 90% since 2000. That part of the story is a genuine, measurable success. Aerial time-lapse, city skyline, hazy to clear. Cold start, sensor drifts. But here's what most people get wrong. They assume the financial pain from this technology falls evenly across the industry, spread out, tolerable, the cost of doing business. It doesn't. Here is what the layered after-treatment system actually costs, in dollars, to the person who owns the truck. An EGR cooler, the part that fails from the constant 500 to 700 degree temperature swing inside it, costs $800 to $1,500 to replace. That's not a one-time expense. Industry data shows it recurs roughly every 50,000 to 80,000 miles. On a truck running 100,000 miles a year, that's a cooler replacement bill arriving on the calendar almost annually, comparable to a mortgage payment landing every 12 months. Except this one is unavoidable and unplanned. A full diesel particulate filter replacement runs $3,000 to $8,000. When the failure cascades, when a cracked EGR cooler dumps coolant into the engine oil, fouls the turbo, and plugs the DPF downstream, all from one root cause, total emissions system repair bills can exceed $15,000 in a single shop visit. That is more than 3 months of take-home pay for the average owner-operator, spent in a single afternoon at a dealership. Now, the industry-wide average. Repair and maintenance costs for a Class 8 truck run about $0.198 per mile. On 100,000 miles a year, that's nearly $20,000, before fuel, before insurance, before the truck payment. Break that number down further. Diagnostic time alone, just identifying which of the 3 interconnected systems actually caused the fault, can run 2 to 4 hours of shop labor before a single part is ordered. At $150 an hour, that's up to $600 spent simply finding the problem, on top of whatever it costs to fix it. Multiply that diagnostic fee across a fleet of even 5 trucks, and a small operation is losing the equivalent of a driver's weekly paycheck to troubleshooting alone. Here is the counterintuitive turn. The emissions hardware isn't failing because the engineering is bad. It's failing because it was never designed to be repaired cheaply. It was designed to be replaced by an authorized dealer, using proprietary diagnostic software, at a facility that bills $100 to $200 an hour. The parts and labor around DPF, EGR, and SCR failures have become one of the most reliable, recurring revenue lines in the entire truck manufacturing business model. The system that was sold to regulators as an environmental fix became, on the back end, a service contract machine. That closes the loop on the promise from Section 2. The villain was never one broken part. It's a business model wearing an environmental compliance label, and the trap has a second jaw. Federal law makes it a civil violation, carrying fines from $4,527 to more than $45,000 per violation, to remove or bypass any of this hardware on a truck that runs on public roads. The technology is expensive to keep and illegal to remove. There is no third option. A seal document, gavel silhouette, text-safe area for lower third. If you've ever sat in a shop parking lot, watching a diagnostic tech plug into your truck's computer, wondering why a part smaller than your fist just cost you a month of runs, you already knew this, even if nobody said it out loud. You weren't imagining it. The system actually is built in a way that makes repeat, expensive failure the normal outcome, not the exception. Here's what most drivers never get told. Fleets that have gotten ahead of this, the ones running lower emissions repair costs than the industry average, did it by breaking from the manufacturer's own maintenance schedule, cleaning DPFs off-cycle, diagnosing root causes instead of replacing symptoms, refusing to let a dealership's default quote be the only quote. That knowledge is not secret. It's just not advertised, because it works against the revenue model of the people selling the parts. Technician inspecting a removed DPF canister on a bench. Understanding this doesn't just change how you read a repair invoice. It changes how you read the entire second half of a trucking career, because the operators failing right now aren't failing because they're bad at driving. They're failing because the cost structure underneath the truck was never built with a one-truck operation in mind. Which brings us to what happens next. In 2025 and into 2026, thousands of small carriers exited the industry every month, not from a single cause, but from years of costs like these compounding against rates that never recovered. Regulators are now reworking parts of this rulemaking. DEF-related shutdown software is being revised, and a new nitrogen oxide standard arrives for engines built in 2027 and after, a fourth layer, on top of 3 that were never designed to work together in the first place. The technology built to make American trucking cleaner did that. It also made it something else, harder to survive in, one dealership invoice at a time. The next generation of trucks is already being engineered right now, and whether it repeats this pattern or finally breaks it will decide who is still driving in 10 years.